My profound greetings to you, my friends. It has been I have been made aware that there are people here from around the world, so saying a good evening, as I normally do, or good afternoon, will not hold true today. I am your friend, Carl, and I'm here to talk to you just a little bit before we go into the sessions of questions and answers. I have been standing here listening to your conversations, and it is time for me to remind you of things that I used to say very often when I walked the earth plane and stood before you in our chapel in the basement of that building that I was so fond of. I used to talk often about the fact that I needed to spoon feed the people. I could not give them the entire truth because they were not equipped to handle the truth, because the truth would be too shocking and too cumbersome and too much of an obstacle for them to assimilate, because they have been taught a certain way, and the truth that I was going to share with them was the exact opposite, and therefore they would not be able to react to it well. You all know that this particular medium who I'm speaking to had his own battles with me and the spirit world, because he clung to what he believed in and what he was taught as a child so strongly, until eventually, through his research, he was able to give way and allow himself to change his opinion. So imagine what it would be like for everyone to have gone through that. Yes, it is very true that spirit could not give you all the information that is starting to surface in the research that this medium is doing and is now beginning to present and share with people. You would not have been able to absorb it back then. It was too shocking for many people to believe that the priests and the rabbis and the ministers that they looked up to for so many years were deliberately lying to them. And if it wasn't the 20th century ones we were talking about, if it was the ancient ones, the reverence for their institutions was still very powerful, and therefore they would still have rebelled against that thought. They would not have accepted it. And they would have said that spirit is wrong, or that the medium is getting it wrong. And therefore they could not change their opinion because their feet were anchored in cement and would not allow themselves to change their opinion. They would not be open enough to it. If you remember, anyone used to say, have an open mind and reason it out for yourself. Well, that is what we are talking about. So with your experiences in your present day, you have been accustomed to the fact that you are being presented untruths, and therefore the truth is out there. So it is now a wonderful time for this information to surface. For as this medium is discovering, this information is not brand new. Some of it has been around for a very long time, but because people were so complacent in what they believed, they weren't looking for this information, and nor would they have believed it if they came across it. So we wanted to clarify that with you, to let you know that, as this medium stated, what was written in the books is not incorrect. It is just not the full picture, which is being brought into focus as of these days. So with that being said, we are working with this medium in order to guide him not only to the information, but guide him in the process of how to organize the information, how to set it up, and how to weave together this intricate pattern so that it will be clear for everyone to understand the truths that have been buried for so long and is now going to come back to the surface and brought into the light. So with that being said, we are open to our first question.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you for being here, Carl and friends. We really appreciate it. The first question is from Ann Brown. I had a meeting with Carl years ago, and he told me that my mother could talk to the Ouija board, although he does not recommend it for everybody. I wondered if I have the same privilege as my mother.
The instrument that you're talking about, the Ouija board, is that it's an instrument, it's a tool to use to get the mind out of the way, to allow spirit to communicate. It is a tool. Yes, she would have the ability to use that tool as her mother did, but it's a point of concentration. She could just as easily use a bowl of water, a crystal ball, tarot cards, any of those instruments, tea leaves, any of those instruments work the same. It is not an inherent quality of that particular instrument or any one that I stated before. It is not anything that's there. It is just a distraction. It is a point of focus so that your conscious mind is dealing with the physical instrument that you're talking about, while we go into the subconscious mind and plant our thoughts and our communication through. So the answer to the question is yes, but any of those tools would be the same thing.
Thank you. So the next question is from Joan Adams. I understand that the Alliance includes a group of good extraterrestrials that are here to help Earth. Can you explain the process of how they have been able to convince the bad guys to step down, such as Klaus Schwab and other corrupt leaders in this country?
It is not exactly the way that you are describing what happened. You make it sound like a bunch of the good guys surrounded a bad guy and presented him with arguments and convinced him to change his mind. That is not how it happened. What was happening is that a bunch of the good guys got together and orchestrated a plan in order to entrap the person so that they had no alternative but to go away. It was not a matter of convincing them. It was a matter of catching them at their game and the threat of exposing them to what the authorities or whatever it was what was used in order to force that particular person to exit the scene. An argument, an intellectual argument between the good and the bad will go nowhere. It was what has to happen is that the good guys have to create a scenario, has to create a plan, a method in order to trap or pressure the bad guy to go away, to stop their activity, whatever happens to be. But a moral or a intellectual confrontation will not serve a purpose.
Thank you. So this is kind of another part of Joan Adams' question. What will we be benefiting in the immediate future from the bank changes with NESARA, which are still quite secret to the public?
For eons of your time, the vast majority of people have been enslaved because of the financial obligations that they needed. For example, there are so many people who go to their job because they need the money, not because they're in love with what they're doing, but they cannot afford to change their career because it would change their financial status. And therefore, they choose to be in a situation that is not fulfilling to them simply because of monetary means. The whole system of having your banking systems where they are making money because they give you money to use will be changing. In that way, the financial burdens that one takes on when they purchase a home or a car or make a big purchase will be decreased, because what they will be doing is paying off the price of the home without all the interest and extra money that they have to come up with in order to buy that home. So the if you want to use the word enslavement to the whole financial system, will be decreasing on a grand proportion, and people will be able to borrow the money that they need, but they will be returning that amount of money back, as opposed to institutions like banks making profit off that loan. That will be coming to an end. The same goes with the cards that you use in order to buy things. If you do not pay your bill every month, you have to pay extra money. That also will be terminating, so that it will not happen. There will have to be safeguards put in that people cannot go on spending sprees and buy all kinds of things then they can't afford to repay back the money. So there will have to be a certain safeguard or certain limits placed upon what a person could borrow, because it would take too long for them to pay it back. So there will be certain safeguards put in place so that the system will work. People can borrow what they need, pay it back in a certain period of time, and then borrow more money as they need more. So this is what the grand plan will be, and it will take some more time for this to come about, because what you are going to be experiencing was something that hasn't happened for thousands of years, because the this enslavement to finances has been around for ages and millenniums.
Thank you. The next question is from Laura Mayola. I'm not sure I pronounced that right. My question for Carl is that I've been wondering, will our beloved pets be waiting for us in the spirit world for our arrival, or are our pets, or do our pets move on and reincarnate after they depart from the physical world?
To answer your question, the answer is both, but it's very much as human beings who go into the spirit world. They usually stay there for about 70 years. They are there learning and experiencing and improving their spiritual knowledge while they are there. But when a loved one comes to the world of spirit, they are there to greet them. Within a span of 70 years, human beings usually have a need to come back, if they need to come back to the world of the physical, in order to have more lessons and to progress their soul further. Animals are pretty much the same way. They have the opportunity to come back, but again, it is their choice as to when. their spirituality is different than the human species, for they do not usually end up with a karmic debt that they have to come and work out. So they usually stay into the physical world and the spirit world for quite some time, and they are there for their owners to come. When they come in the spirit world, they are there to greet them. In some cases, they are the first to greet the arriving spirit, and other times they are there, and depending on the person, they may go to the pet first, or they may go to their mother and father first. It depends, but they are there. They are an important part of the physical life and the physical love connections that are made here, and therefore they are there in the spirit world. Again, at some point, pets and animals do want to come back and have another round of physical life, and they do come back, but they usually wait until their owners come to the world of spirit to be there to greet them, for their love is as strong as the love for between physical people, and therefore they want to be there to greet their owners, their beloved masters, if you want to use that term, to be there to greet them and to share their love with them, again on the same plane. For as you know, when someone passes, whether it's a animal or a human being, the physical connection that was there between the persons or the animals no longer exists. So there is a separation, and many times it's a painful separation. The grief process is a very real thing, even though we know intellectually the energy and the soul of the individual is in another dimension. We still miss the physical connection. So when the person returns to the spirit world, they are again on the same plane of existence and can have that same connection in the same dimension. And that is something that is very powerful. And the animal waits for their owner to return to the world of spirit.
Thank you, Spirit. The next question is from Susan. Spirit, can you tell us your perspective on the angels and the archangels? Are the angels actually a part of our higher self, or are they completely different beings? How do the archangels differ from the angels? Thank you so very much.
For the most part, angels are spiritual beings that have always been spiritual beings, meaning they have not taken on human form. They have not lowered their frequency to the point where they take on a human body and have a human experience. So they do not have that experience. They have always been spiritual beings, and therefore they are there to help guide and help direct those who are open to their direction. The human always has free will. They can always, sometimes, let me say it this way, sometimes a human being can feel an inspiration in their mind, but not know exactly where it comes from. And then many times it can come from a spirit, and sometimes it can come from an angel. They have the ability, the human being, because of free will, to accept what is that inspiration that pops into their mind, or they can choose to ignore it. That is part of the human nature of free will. But the angels are here in order to influence us. That is not to say that the only way that they can influence people is through the gift of clairsentience or clairvoyance, or clairaudience. There are times when angels come into the physical world and materialize so that the physical person actually sees and has encounters with that angel. That angel does not show up with wings and a halo, as you might think, or at least not usually. They are here to guide the person in a more physical way when they materialize, and they usually show up dressed in the costume of the everyday person. They are not standing out. They are usually do not say, "Hey, I'm an angel, listen to me." They will present their point of view as if they were a friend or a relative of the person, as a normal person, as two human beings talking to each other, and therefore they will not reveal their identity, but yet they are providing the information and the guidance for that particular person. Again, the physical person has the ability to listen to that person or to not to listen to that person as part of their free will. Archangels are angels who, let's put it this way, if you can understand it. They're kind of like CEOs of major corporations. They have many, they oversee the angels. There are many angels. They kind of guide the angels in guiding the humans. So they're like a step above, but it's more of an organizational type thing, as opposed to being more spiritual or having more spiritual knowledge. That is not the case. It is more like an administrative type of situation where they are managing a group of angels who are dealing with many different people. So as you realize or yourself, there are certain people in this world, in the physical world I'm talking about, who are very good at multitasking and able to juggle many different things at once. There are other people who are terrible at multitasking. So the archangels are really good at multitasking, and they are able to assist and guide the angels who are guiding many different people. Many of the angels, per se, are not multitaskers or have a difficult time with it. So the system that is in place works very well for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Carol. I've listened to some mediums who predict dire happenings this year. Many of us are concerned about this and also concerned about helping our families who have taken the jab to walk through this turmoil, keeping a focus on the bright future that we know is coming, that we're co-creators of. Can you give us guidance in this moment on how we can best help ourselves and families move forward safely through these times?
The one thing to realize is that you do not have all the answers. No one on the physical planet does. Even we in the spirit world, although we can see into the future, we also don't always have all the answers. And the other thing to realize is that the future is always changing. There are quantum mechanics involved. There are all kinds of potentials that can happen. And even though we're in the spirit world and can see the future, we can only see the possibilities. And sometimes we don't know if we're looking at into the future and see 9 different scenarios, and we don't always know which one of the 9 is actually going to happen. So it's a very imprecise system in a way. So that being said, the best thing for a human being to do is to realize that we have a better perspective than you do. And therefore, it serves you best to be open to our suggestions. Our suggestions can come on a daily basis. Our suggestions can come whenever you reach out to us. And again, if situations change from week to week, we can keep you posted of that. So what we are saying is the best thing for you to do to stay abreast of things and to be in the most positive light is to be constantly open to our suggestions. Now, what do I mean by that? I do not mean to open up to spirit for 24 hours a day. That's not what I meant. What I meant is that you continually take some time, if not every day, every other day, to go into a meditative state, to quiet the mind, to sit down and ask us to be your guide, to be your guidance. Ask us for direction, ask us your questions. And then the important thing is you need to be quiet and allow us to answer. Do not be concerned if you sit down and ask for an answer and the answer doesn't come to you. It might come a day or two later. It may take some time to figure it out. It may take some time for you to get your mind into the exact openness to allow us to connect to your frequency in order to provide the answer. Because sometimes the human mind is very tricky and you think you are in a meditative state, but we might need you at level 100 and you are at only 1170. You're only at level 72. You're not quite there. So the communication cannot quite take place. That can happen. So do not be impatient with yourself. So we ask you to take regular intervals to allow us to influence your mind, allow us to press our thoughts in. And how that will happen is different from person to person. Sometimes we are able to put a whole thought into your mind and it just pops into your mind. Other times you might hear a voice, you might see a vision, you might have a dream. It is all different ways that we can contact you. So the important point is the intent that you set out there to ask for this guidance, because we do not want to. We need you to ask, because we cannot force. We cannot just go to knock on your door and say, "Hey, this is what you should do." We're not allowed to do that. But if you ask, as the great master said, ask and the door will open. Knock and the door will open. Well, you need to ask. Ask us for our help. Ask us for our guidance. Ask us for our input, and we will be there to do that. That would include, if you wish to get guidance for your family members and the people that you love, who may not be quite open to everything that is happening here in this session per se, but you can ask on how you can assist them also. So this is the strongest thing that we can suggest to you at the time, because everything is in a state of flux, as I explained before, and so by constantly or continually, use that word instead, by continually seeking our guidance on a regular basis, you will establish a connection with us, and we will be delighted to be working with you to guide you so that you will not misstep in any direction.
Thank you. The next question is from Ria. I would like Carl's opinion about the meaning, quote, brain dead, spiritually, as in that state surgeons take the organs of a person before dying.
Would you repeat that, please?
I would like Carl's opinion about the meaning of brain dead spiritually, as in that state when surgeons take the organs of a person before they've actually died. Ria is on the Zoom if you need a further.
No, it's when a person's considered brain dead, they are considered not being able to survive on their own, and therefore at certain points they harvest the organs to help other people. On a spiritual level of that, the life has come to an end. And in effect, what is happening is that it is, excuse me, you must understand that this happened to me. For when I was in my last hours and days of my physical life, I had a stroke, and therefore my brain was not working. They said that I was brain dead, and therefore the decision needed to be made whether to pull the plug on my life support and release me. Fortunately for me, my wishes were very much known that I would not want to remain trapped in my body. In fact, I wasn't trapped in my body because I knew how to leave the body, and I left. I was in the spirit world enjoying myself while the body was still there, brain dead, waiting for the plug to be pulled. But I did return to my body before I permanently left it, before my soul permanently left. And at that point of my taking my last breaths, I moved my head and looked at this medium, even though my eyes were closed, and supposedly my brain was dead, but my head moved as if to my only way to say goodbye before I left. So this is a bit of an emotional question for me, and that is just fine. And that's a little bit of why I'm having a difficulty answering it. Spiritually, you wouldn't want to be left in that body. I certainly did not. I wanted out. I wanted out desperately because I didn't want to be in a prison of not being able to talk, not being able to speak, not being able to eat. What is the point of remaining here? Especially since I had a very clear understanding of what the spirit world was like, and I didn't want any more of the physical life because I couldn't live. I was entrapped. So therefore, there is no spiritual negativity to pulling the plug. It's not that you're killing the person; you're releasing them from almost a prison sentence, especially when they are considered brain dead and they can't survive on their own. So that is basically, there's no spiritual consequence for that decision. In fact, it is usually a blessing. Now, it's often difficult for the person to do that. It depends on what how well they've been educated in the process of death. When this medium had to make the decision, while it was upsetting, it wasn't traumatic because he understood the consequences of not doing it, and he knew what my wishes were. For people who do not understand the process of death, they sometimes linger in guilt because they feel that they have killed their loved one when they actually did the most blessing that they could to their loved one to release them from a prison of not being able to move. So, but they end up in this guilt trip that takes them a while to process through. But there is no karma, there's no consequence of this because the person can't live on their own anymore. It's not like a living person walking down the street and you take a gun and shoot them. You are ending their life. Their life is already ended. They can't live it. They are imprisoned in a body that doesn't work anymore. So what is the point? So therefore, pulling the plug, using that expression, is really a blessing to do. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Our last question is from Rhonda. How long will it take for people to wake up to the truth about the vaccines? And will it take the death of many children for people to see the danger in the vaccines?
Unfortunately, that is true. It will take the death of many children and many people for them to understand the evil nature of this particular vaccine and what has been foisted on the public by these dark scientists or so-called scientists. The process of what is happening now, the process of learning to question authority in a healthy way is what needs to happen. For eons of time, people have looked to their religious leaders as speaking the truth and telling the truth of what their God, an old man sitting up on the throne someplace, wanted them to do. This has been believed for thousands of years. And it was all based on lies. It was all based on myths. God is energy as you understand it. And anything that deviates from that is man-made baloney, I'll use that word. This concept that I just stated is new to many people. For you can travel the world over and find people who so strongly believe in the brainwashing they received as children and as far as religions go, that what I have just said is such blasphemy that if they had the power, they would burn me at the stake as they used to do centuries ago. This concept has been ingrained in humanity. And it not only applies to religions, but it applies to the governments. And people believe their governments have their best interests in heart. But in fact, for many of them, just like religions, they are power-hungry people who will do anything to keep their power. So there's a very strong tie between religion and politics. There always has been, but it's even stronger these days. That truth, that concept is being exposed at this point. And there are people who need to still learn this. As it says, some people have to learn the hard way. What you need to understand is that the people who will be going into the world of spirit because of these vaccines are not exactly victims, because before they came into the physical world, they signed up for this. They knew what was going to happen. It's almost as if they volunteered to do this, to be the sacrificial lambs to bring this truth into existence. You may ask, why would someone want to do that? And that is because it is part of their journey of their soul in order to have that experience. And therefore, they agreed to it beforehand, before they came to the physical world. So while their deaths are tragic, and I will not take away that energy, it is a tragedy. And for their family members who are left behind, the grief is very profound. But it was something that they chose. So yes, they are victims, but they chose to be victims, and their soul needed that experience. That piece of information needs to be woven into your concept and your view of this subject, to understand that they are sacrificing to bring in the truth into the world, to expose this truth. So in some way, it helps to alleviate the pain of what happened to them in some way for yourself as the observer. But that's not to negate what's happening, if you understand. So yes, This was all put into place. It was all part of what had been planned in order for the transition from the age of ignorance into the age of knowledge. Because you are going into a time when these power-hungry people will no longer have power. They will no longer be able to manipulate people and to make them their slaves and make them do their bidding. People will learn to be independent. They will learn to, as was stated just before, to open themselves up to the world of spirit, and they will understand that God is energy, that God communicating with this energy is very much part of the human heritage, the birthright of every human being that was stolen from them by these people who are greedy and power hungry and mistaught them centuries ago. This is all coming back to the surface. And we are delighted that that will happen, although it takes the sacrifice of many people for this to come about.
Thank you. And if you can allow just one more question, please. So will our mainstream media begin to change and get some truth out there? So there's so many people that still believe the false words of the mainstream media.
What will happen is there is no return for those people. They are losing the trust of the people, and there will be no way for them to gain it back. So the mainstream media, as you call it, will die, and a new type of media will be born, a media that will serve the truth as it used to be at one point, although the truth was always a bit limited, but it was certainly a lot more truth years ago than now. A new media will be formed, a whole new system will come about, because no one will trust the old ones anymore. They've lied too long.
Do you see anything time-wise, how soon we might see that?
There are certain places on what you call your internet where the seeds of this new media can be found at this point. They will grow further and further and eventually break out so that they are more on your telecommunications than just your computers, excuse me. So it is a process. It is very much like any seed that is planted in the ground. It takes some time for it to sprout. It takes some time for it to nurture and grow until it flowers. You are asking about the flowering of this, and it is just sprouting at this point.
Well, thank you so much, Carl and friends. From our hearts, we appreciate all your guidance. Thank you. We love you.
It is certainly our pleasure to come through and talk with you and to provide the guidance and the answers to the questions that you have, because at this point, there is so much, as you say, there's so much happening in the world, and some people, not to say you people are confused, but you are seeking truth, you are seeking answers, and there's very few places for you to know that you are getting the absolute truth. So we are here to give you our perspective. We stress to you also that our perspective is our perspective. And if another spirit was talking through this channel, you might get slightly different answers because there might be a slightly different point of view, but that's the same thing that happens on your earth plane. If you go to advice for 5 different people, you might get 5 different answers, and it's up to you to sort it out. But we are giving you our perspective as we see things in the moment, and we ask you to take it not as gospel truth or written in stone, but to take it and to analyze it and for yourself and see if it resonates with yourself, and to accept what what you feel resonates, and then question what doesn't, and continue to seek out the question answers or that you need on the topics that you have. We are most happy. We are even, I should say, we are delighted to be of service to you, to provide you the information that you seek. With that, I am going to release the instrument. And before I do, I just want to share my blessings with you. Remember to take some time to continue to be in a meditative state in order to speak with us, but also take some time to continually seek healing for your bodies so that you can remain healthy through these turbulent times. My strongest and deepest blessings go to all of you. So be it.